Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm Amrys Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut League of History Organizations, and I'm so glad to welcome you all today to talk about a new program that CLHO is offering in partnership with a few other organizations called Museum Makeover. So thank you all for being here today. This will be recorded, and as I mentioned, the recording will go straight to CLHO's YouTube channel, which you can find from the social media buttons on our main webpage, clho.org. Without further ado, let me also introduce my sort of partner in crime in this project, Kathy Craughwell-Varda. She is the Director of Conservation Connection based at the Connecticut State Library, and she's the coordinator of Museum Makeover. Many of you may also know her as a museum consultant who has done a lot of work around the state and the region, and as also a STEPS mentor in the past. So I'm going to share my screen, and we have a little presentation today, and we're going to walk you through the application as well, but hopefully we'll have lots of time at the end to take your questions and answer those to the best of our ability. So here we go. Go to the PowerPoint. As I won't be able to see questions in the chat really as we're going with the presentation, but if you have anything that comes up, please feel free to pop it in the chat, and we'll get to those questions first after we've done speaking. And then, we can take questions live as well at that point as well. Go. So Museum Makeover is a collaboration between Conservation Connection, based out of the Connecticut State Library, and the Connecticut League of History Organizations, made possible with funding from Connecticut Humanities and Connecticut's Department of Economic and Community Development Office of the Arts. So just to talk a little bit about the idea behind this program and what we're trying to achieve with what we're calling Museum Makeover. The idea here is really to offer resources and expertise to help visibly improve the visitor experience at museums, heritage organizations, historical societies, cultural organizations that serve the public around Connecticut. And to really do this in a way that is practical, that meets organizations where they are, and that helps them make really hands-on concrete improvements in a short amount of time. We're really focused here on trying to offer the kinds of expertise, ideas and brainstorming, and also real financial and human assistance to make these improvements possible. The idea is also to spark conversations both at organizations and in the larger cultural field in Connecticut that help organizations continue to do this work on their own and to do it more effectively, and to also help create relationships, among institutions, people at institutions, and consultants and other experts in the field that can help them continue what we sort of trying to kickstart with Museum Makeover. As you've seen, if you've read anything about this program so far, the idea with Museum Makeover is to really focus on the parts of these organizations that directly impact what the public sees when they come to your site. And the idea behind that is to really help you and your organizations broaden and grow your audiences in whatever ways you're looking to do that. So that is going to be a part of the conversation if you are selected to participate in this program. And as with everything we're doing in the next 2 years, especially with this infusion of funds from the legislature and Connecticut Humanities, is to really demonstrate the importance of Connecticut's cultural sector to our legislators and show what we can do when the state invests in our organizations and in our sector. So I want to hand things over to Kathy for a minute because in many ways this program is sort of her brainchild, and I want her to kind of walk through the mechanics of how this program works and what you get if you participate. Kathy?
Great. Thank you so much, Amrys. I have to say, many of you will recall that the Connecticut League and Conservation Connection, when it first started, more than 10 years ago, partnered on a lot of programs. And I'm just so glad that Amrys and I have a chance to kind of do this program together. When I was developing the museum makeover idea, honestly, you know, I called Amrys. I said, you want to do this together? I think this is like the perfect program for our two groups. So to kind of give you a little bit of background, the Museum Makeover program is modeled after the Traveling Archivist program that I run for Conservation Connection out of the Connecticut State Library. Many of you on this call have participated by having these free half-day assessments from our traveling archivist, whether it's an assessment of your archival collection, whether you helped participate in the Finding Aid program or the re-grant program. And so the idea here again is to bring museum professionals to your site. Instead of you trying to raise the funds to hire consultants to kind of help you with these projects, we're going to fund it for you and bring these people out to really focus on what are your needs. Where would you make over a space? You know, we're going all HGTV on you here. If you could, in your museum. So this is a competitive process. Over the next 2 years, we will be selecting 12 organizations each year to participate in this program. The online application is due January 31st of next year. So really, it's not a long application and you do have plenty of time to kind of pull this together. If you're selected to participate, what you get are 2 free site visits from our team of traveling curators. Expect to have like 2 curators come on site to work with you. Connecticut Humanities and have been really fabulous, and we have up to $3,000 to also give you to pay for improvements, to do the implementation for these projects that you're going to propose to us, and to make sure that you're able to let your community and your audience know that you've made these upgrades, that you've done these changes. You'll get a free consultation with a marketing professional who will sit down with you for a couple of hours and really go over, how do you sell this? How do you, you know, if you build it, we want to make sure they come. So that's what we're going to help you do with this. You want to go to the next slide, Amrys?
So just to walk you a little bit through kind of the timeline of the program itself, as Kathy mentioned, we have the funds from Connecticut Humanities to do this program twice over the next couple of years. But as I mentioned at the top, this is really focused on, you know, immediate improvements that are doable right now. And so if we have applications due at the end of January, we're going to be selecting and notifying the organizations who will be participating by the end of February. Going to kick off the site visits in the spring and implementation starting in the summer, and really trying to wrap up the program, you know, by the fall. So this is just to give you a sense of, you know, as you're generating ideas about what might be doable projects that you would want to describe in your application, that's to give you a sense of the timeline. This is quick. You know, it would be before the end of 2022 that you'd want to be finished implementing, you know, what we'd be doing with this program. And as Kathy mentioned, you know, we're really focusing here on 3 areas that are most related to what the public experiences when they come to your institution. And these include exhibits, historic house interpretation, and the collections and storage that underpin all of that public-facing work. So I'm going to hand things over to Kathy again to walk us through some examples of, you know, just to generate some ideas of what this might look like for your organization.
Great, thank you. So as Amrys mentioned, the applications, you're going to have the opportunity to select from 3 areas at your institution to focus on: exhibits, historic house interpretation, and collections. So let's talk a little bit about exhibits. Right here in front of you, you see a before and after of the same angle from the same perspective of this museum. So if you look like the exhibit on the left, where not only do you have a stove and a baby chair and some tents and flags, but also your storage tables, how do you migrate that? Is this an area you would want to migrate and improve? And maybe the outcome you want is what you see on the right, and these are your permanent galleries. So what we're looking to do here is help you tighten the focus of your permanent exhibits. If you have exhibit galleries in your at your institution, we're looking to help you shine a light on collections that are really relevant, that maybe when the display is a little bit more full. People aren't noticing, they're not recognizing the jewels you have to display, and to really highlight those collection items. Could we go to the next slide, please? This is another example, another perspective. Some of the items you see on the left really did date to the Revolutionary War, but were completely lost with all the reproductions and later materials. So what you see on the right is this gallery reinterpreted to really focus on the Revolution and using each item to really become this really prized relic that when visitors come in, they can really see and focus, but that it also has the didactic text panels to talk about. So for example, personally, when I go out to a lot of institutions, not a lot of them have consistent labeling in their permanent galleries, in their exhibits. There's very little in the way of text panels, so everything has to be docent-led. If you're finding it hard to find volunteers, maybe turning a couple galleries and start looking at how to turn a gallery into something that can be visitor-led, that they can be guided, that collections can be safely put into cases, and you can have that story told on the wall. So this is, one example of how to kind of make those changes to an exhibit. Next slide, please. If your building, if your institution is really a historic house museum, and so each room is interpreted to tell the story of how the spaces were used. All right, so how are those spaces being used now? Were they interpreted 30 years ago and they need refreshing? Do you know more about the story and you want to tighten the focus? So what you see here on the right is one of the rooms at the Greenwich Historical Society's Bush Holly House. When this was reinterpreted, the painting that you see on the left, which was done by Charles Haslam when he stayed in this room, was the inspiration for the room on the right. And you can see just by focusing on the mantelpiece, how those items were all brought together. And that Windsor chair that you see on the left in both, that is that chair from the painting. It's original. It means more to visitors coming through and seeing how long that chair's been in the house, how it was something that appealed to Haslam, that he incorporated. So do you want to do something like that? Take source materials you have and really try to bring them alive in how your period rooms are furnished and interpreted. Next slide, please. But then there's also, are there stories you want to tell that you need to kind of create a setting in your house? So on the left, you see the quarters that were interpreted for the enslaved people of the Bush family at the Greenwich Historical Society. And on the right, you see the furnished room for the Tappan Reeve Law School. And in both cases, that's, research, and it's a way of kind of talking about people who come into the building that are part of the story, but they need their own space sometimes to be able to tell this story. So is that something you're looking to do? Are you looking to broaden how you tell the history of your community to be more inclusive, to be able to tell a lot of these stories that sometimes are hidden histories that haven't been told before? Are you looking to do that? Next slide, please. And then collection storage. So the reason we put collection storage in this program is that being able to look at your exhibit spaces, whether they're permanent, whether they're historic period rooms, what do you have to kind of really tell these stories? What are the gems in your collection that you want people to see? But unless the pieces are being preserved well, it's really hard to have that collection that can keep being brought out for exhibits and educational purposes. So I'm actually going to do a shout out. This is the Sharon Historical Society from a number of years ago when I worked with them. On the left is the chair room. And as you can see, if you want that red ladderback chair in the bag, you're going to have to move a whole lot of stuff to get to that. But, maybe you need us to kind of come in and say, we could do some really inexpensive two-tiered shelving. Same amount of collections are now in the room, but you can now walk around and get to things safely. And you can see the collections and access it more easily. And that's really an important part of the program is, what is the state of your collection storage? Do you know what's in there? And can you access it? So I'm going to show you some other before pictures that you may see some familiarities with your own collection. So as you can see on the left, not a great looking storage room with all the stuff on the floor. On the right, you see all that stuff beautifully housed, but there's not a label to be seen. How do you know what's in the box if you don't label what's in it? So how do you make the collections more accessible? And what we're looking to do here with you is low tech, low cost solutions that will make the collections preserved, accessible, easy for you to work with and handle, but will help you find those gems that you may not even know are back there anymore and may need to see the light of day. Next slide, please. Okay, so what we're asking you to do, yeah, we're going to do the application next and then do that. Yes, thank you. Okay, so if you think this is a program for you, you're going to go to the Connecticut League's website, and there is a link on there to go to this online application. There's the website, there's the page for the Museum Makeover program. You will simply go down, go to apply to participate, and you will go right to this online application. Really easy to fill out. There's a summary, again, as you see, about the program, about the funders, who we are incredibly grateful for. And what we're doing here is we're going to collect some basic contact information, contact data. Heads up, it's going to collect the email that you apply on, but there's another line to put in a secondary email if that's where you want us to contact you. Because we're using state funds, we want you to go to this link and let us know who your state reps are, your state rep and your state senator. Because if you participate, we want to tell them, hey, look, your site got this grant, and this is because of money you gave to Connecticut Humanities and the Connecticut Arts. And we really want to do a shout out and thank you for this. So make sure we know who to contact at your site, who's going to be the contact person for this program, okay? We then want to ask you about who's there. So we'll ask you if you have any full-time staff, part-time staff, number of volunteers. This is going to help us understand who's there to participate, because don't expect this to be a program. We go in, you let us in the house, you point out this room, and then you go and have a cup of tea. You know, this is engagement. Interaction is an important part of this whole program. You know, think about this and talk to the people at your site, because as I just said, this is about interaction and working together to bring improvements to a particular space at your site. So how many individuals at your institution do you think are going to come in and, you know, want to be there for that first site visit with the traveling curators? Who's going to come in to help with the implementation? Talk to people, tell them about the program, and see who can come in. We also want to know how many visitors you get annually. Now, we know everybody's numbers are different since the pandemic started. You can put in pre-pandemic numbers. That's fine. Just tell us that's what they are. And then we want to know how often you're open to the public. That also helps us know when we're going to be able to go out and see you, what your flexibility is. We're also asking that you let us know what your budget is, okay? This is total expenses at your institution annually. All of these help us get a good picture of who you are in your institution. And then these two might seem, I hope they don't seem challenging to anybody, but you know, one of the things that we're trying to do with a lot of these programs this year is collect information to see how we can better support you. So if you can tell me how much you spend annually on installing exhibits, or how much you spend on collection care, that's going to help us understand, wow, you know, this site really needs more money for this, or we need to get more state funding to help support these areas. And then we want a brief description. You know, let's be honest, it's probably going to take you a couple paragraphs to describe your institution. Feel free to cut and paste in your mission, talk about the history of your organization, things that are relevant. Share with us what you think you're really good at, what are your successes, but also tell us where your challenges are. You know, you may tell us, you know, the entire house is exhibit space and period rooms, so you have a closet, an attic, and a basement for collection storage, and you don't know how to break out of that pattern. we'll break you out of that pattern. Hopefully, we'll help you find. And then tell us what kind of institution you are. How do you see yourself? Are you an art museum? Are you a historical society? Are you a historic house museum? I'm letting you check all that apply because historical societies can be art museums, and they may be located in a historic house. You let us know how you see yourself. And then you're going to pick from one of these categories. Do you want help with permanent exhibits? Do you want help with historic house period rooms? Do you want help with your museum collection or your archive collection? We've broken them up because they are handled differently, and often museums do separate them in their collection storage. Then tell us why you selected this area. Was your historic house period rooms interpreted 40 years ago, and you notice there's 100 years of antique artifacts that's meant to be a room from 1850? Okay. How do you want to tighten that up? Is that really the best thing? In your permanent exhibits, do you notice that there are important stories that aren't being told that you now want to include? Collection storage, you might say, I know in the back corner, we have fabulous paintings and they're all spread out, and we need them all together. How do we create a distinct storage area for our framed collections so that, one, they're preserved and protected, but two, we can access them easier? And once you can see collections, you can also start getting inspiration for exhibits. Describe the anticipated outcome of the project. This is not to write, it'll be better. This is to kind of tell us what you really want. Why do you want to interpret some new stories? Why is the painting collection maybe the collection area that you need help on, and not your ceramics or your quilts? Tell us why you selected this category. Tell us what the anticipated outcome is. But as Amrys mentioned at the beginning, one of the really key components of this program is to really enhance the visitor experience. If you're a historic house museum, you're probably really aware that repeat visitation is a real challenge in historic houses. So will making changes to your period rooms improve the visitor experience, bring more visitors in? Changing a permanent exhibit, what are the stories that the community wants to know about that you think you can now bring to them? So tell us how participating is going to impact visitation and the visitor experience. But then we want you to also think about how you evaluate success. Are you going to be doing online or in-person evaluations? How would you measure success? Is it just an uptick in audiences, members coming out to your site? And then,
if I can just interject
yeah,
one
please.
thing in here, I was just, one of the things that you might be thinking about as well. I mean, Kathy's described some of the ways in which organizations maybe are thinking about incorporating more diverse stories into their interpretation if the interpretation hasn't been refreshed in a while. Or maybe you're getting questions from the community, or you see that there's a segment of your community that doesn't come to your institution. Those are some ideas to be thinking about around this, because those are things that we want to be able to use this program to help you with. There are two other things I want to mention in this area as well, in addition to kind of, drawing out stories that you haven't interpreted in the past that could bring in a new audience to you and make them excited about what you're doing. Thinking about the schools and the curriculum, and perhaps maybe you want to think about better connecting some of the stories that you're telling in your permanent exhibition or in your period rooms to what can serve the schools and educators in your area. And the last thing I just want to mention here is that we are coming up on the 250th anniversary of the founding of this nation in 1776. And so that may be something else that you want to be thinking about. And that's definitely in our minds as we're thinking about this program. Maybe you want to draw out new aspects of a revolutionary story that you haven't been telling before, or maybe you want to tell a different story in an area that has largely been focused on interpreting the revolution. Whatever that might look like for you, thinking about the 250th is another thing that you may have in mind when you're thinking about a project that you might want to do now, or that could help you build toward things that you're thinking about down the road for 2026.
Amrys, thank you so much for bringing this up. Absolutely, tying your exhibits to the curriculum that the schools now have through the social studies program, social studies program, and also thinking of America 250. All of these sites, I'm sure you have your bicentennial quilts or you have relics from your bicentennial interpretation. What should be different this time around as we look at America's founding and these stories? So that's all things to kind of think about. You don't have to do all of them. It doesn't have to tie into everything. We really want you to kind of hone in, but think of all the different options that are available to you. You can share any additional information here, and who knows what that looks like. But it could be, you tell me all about this and this is wonderful. And then you might say, we want to do this, but all the, our rooms are only 5 feet tall. So how do we make this work with visitors? I'm throwing crazy stuff out there. But if there's any additional information we need to know that will help us better understand your proposal, please put this here. And then something different, you can upload images. So if there's a permanent exhibit gallery you want to focus on as part of your project, or a period room, or a collection storage room, share those pictures. It's going to help support whatever you've now written about and proposed in your application. It's really easy to add photos. Amrys and I can always walk you through if you have any issues. Just go around with your iPhone, go to your computer, drag them in, select them from your computer. Very simple to do, but it's something that we can then share with the grant panel as they look at this information. Okay, so as we mentioned, go to the CLHO site, click on, there's the link to Museum Makeover. Couple tips to just think about. When you're applying, don't don't come and say, I want you to come up with a new interpretation for our entire historic house. Don't ask the program to reinterpret 5 permanent exhibit rooms. That's way too big for, 2-day visit. That's way too much. So look, be focused, tighten the focus. Is there one period room? Gosh, our dining room looks like it's completely empty. Nothing ever happens. We'd like to overlay a story. We want to do a New England Thanksgiving in here. How would we do that? Or looking at your permanent galleries, we want to be more inclusive in the story we tell of our colonial period, not just the founders. Here's the area we want to focus on. Okay. And take photos. I think, this is the first time we're asking for photographs for a project like this. I think they're really going to help sell your application. But, don't be shy to reach out for any questions. You are welcome and encouraged to contact me in advance to ask questions like, well, is this a better project or is this one? Let's talk them out. That's absolutely fine. This is not the type of grant application where you send it in and that's it. You got to just wait to hear whether or not you were funded. I will be reaching out. Amrys will be talking to you. We are here to field questions, to look at your applications before they go to the grant panel, to see where things may need clarification. So by all means, please reach out. Let's be very honest, we're heading into the holidays. So take the rest of December to really think about your projects, document them, work on the application, and then let's plan after January 1st to reach out and let's talk about them. It'll still give you 4 weeks to get the application in. As you saw, it's not super long. It's not super complicated. What I really want you all to think about is what's the best project I can propose? And that's what we want to do. I wish we could fund all of you. I can only fund 12 each year. So I want to work with all of you on making sure that the best application you can put together goes in.
Yeah, and I just want to mention a couple of other ways to be involved. As we said, this is a program that we're going to be running for 2 years in a row. So, there's an opportunity to reapply next year. Please don't be discouraged if your organization isn't selected in this round. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention, we don't know exactly what the mechanics of this are going to be, but part of our intention with this program is to open up that second site visit, if organizations are comfortable, to bring other people from neighboring institutions in to kind of see the implementation process, to hear what that conversation between folks at your organization and the traveling curators sounds like, and the sorts of things you're talking about, and the sorts of challenges and solutions that you're coming up with in the process of the project, because I think that's really educational. We can all get a lot out of seeing what other institutions are doing, the concrete improvements they're trying to make, and and follow up and seeing going to visit these places afterwards. So there are ways to be involved in the project this year and next, even if your organization isn't selected. And if you have other ideas about how we can do that, Kathy and I welcome them. We really want to make this as accessible. We only have we have a pot of money for it. And, so we can fund a certain amount of organizations to do it this time around. But, we're hopeful that there will be some way to continue this program, if we can secure funding beyond this and keep doing it if it's successful. And we also want to make it open so that people can learn from the process, even if it's not their institution that's getting the makeover. So, we always
Absolutely.
like to watch those redos happen and see what happens. Kathy and I have both been saying throughout this process, like, I want to be at all of those site visits. That sounds like so much fun. Sit somewhere and nerd out about museums and how to how to do this, how to do that. So that's kind of the gist of what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely.
I'm going to stop my screen share now because I think we've exhausted the formal part of this program, and I want to open things up to the questions that you may have. And I don't see anything has cropped up in the chat so far, so I'm happy to have folks raise their hand and we'll call on you. Alexia, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a question about whether the period house interpretation, if it could be a barn interpretation.
Absolutely. I mean, is the barn an exhibit space that you're looking to try to tell farming history? What are you looking to do with the barn, do you think?
Yes, that, and it's a place that we have stuff in that we occasionally bring people through. It was an exhibit set up 40 years ago, and it's probably the weakest part of our, I think we want to use it more, but it's the weakest part of our kind of what we know and how we interpret it and what we do with it. So, but I didn't know if barn counted, as well.
Absolutely. We want, there are a lot of really fabulous barns in Connecticut. I mean, the tobacco barns in the northern part of the state are really phenomenal. And if that's where you're going to be able to tell the agricultural story or whatever the tie-in is to your site, absolutely. I would even go so far as, outhouses could be included if Greenwich.
Oh, we got that too.
Greenwich Historical has a 7-seater, which I've always found a little frightening, personally. But yeah, you make the case, and please come in with it if you think that's going to be the best area. But I think barns absolutely are included.
Yes. Yeah, I would second that. I mean, I have a background in agricultural history. I would love to see better interpretation of the many amazing agricultural artifacts that are at all our little historical societies and historic sites around the state. And, often they're sort of relegated to the barn, like you were saying, and they're for whatever reason they're not. I think that can be an outhouse can obviously be such a great tie-in because it's so concrete and people can understand that, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
Sarah, you're next, and then I'll get to Melissa's question in the chat.
Sarah.
Okay. I am waiting in line to get a COVID test. Oh boy, I've been sitting in my car for 3 hours.
Lucky you.
Lucky me. So my question though is, I'm involved with a project that has not yet borne fruit. So there's nothing necessarily to make over, but there's a lot to make. And I'm wondering whether it's appropriate for this program to, I was thinking how great to get some input right in the very beginning before we make mistakes with, it's a somewhat challenging project because it's a 14 by 20 foot building. So you look at it and you've seen it, but there's a lot of intellectual content. So I'm just wondering whether this is an appropriate project to seek funding for.
I would say absolutely yes. I think one of the things we've all seen, and Sarah, you were a mentor with Steps with me, to be able to go in on the ground floor before things have gone too far down the road and say, you know what would be amazing in here. I think that's a great opportunity, and I would absolutely say this program. We may say makeovers, but maybe we're making over some plans, not just a furnished space.
Good, great.
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah, we have to thank Liz Shapiro for that fabulous name for the program.
Yeah, Liz came
that
up with the name. Yeah.
Why am I not surprised? Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Sarah. I hope we could provide some entertainment while you're waiting in line.
Yeah.
Melissa asks, thank you so much for all this wonderful info. We're wondering if there's any disqualifying criteria. For instance, can you still apply for this program if you're applying for other Connecticut Humanities grants? You can absolutely apply. I mean, presumably everyone here has applied for some Connecticut Humanities grant recently, like the operating support grant. This is not, this doesn't, if you're taking any other CTH funds, you're still welcome to apply for this program. We'd encourage you to do so.
Yeah. I would say the only thing we want you to do is, if you're a site that has multiple buildings on your campus, don't look at each building as an opportunity for a separate application, just, one application per institution, and for, a very focused project, as we mentioned before.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. And thanks to Lockwood Matthews for being here. Other questions?
I see Anne raising her hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Anne.
Yes, I'm with the Friends of Valley Falls in Vernon, and the property we have is I'll call it a gentleman's farm. It was owned by wealthy people in the 1900s. The Batterson Beach family from Hartford. So the complex of the campus has several buildings, but what we are doing, we currently just give tours, and we don't have any exhibits, with interpretive panels or anything like that. We just walk them through and give a talk about the history. So we're migrating to a facility that will have display panels and interpretive panels, and so we're calling it a Heritage Center, and we've gotten quite a few artifacts, and we will be telling stories, giving stories about each of them. That will be part of the display. So it's a transition from a tour to a museum environment. And I didn't know if this qualifies, this type of, for, your grant, because we haven't, it's a change of state, but we could sure use help with.
I think absolutely. If I think one of the benefits that I see for this program is that ability to kind of brainstorm and get an outside perspective. Very often we become so familiar with our sites that it's hard sometimes to imagine what a new incarnation could be. And if you're recognizing that, well, we're doing these tours, but maybe you need a real orientation area, that kind of, that moment where visitors can kind of mill around and kind of take in the story before they begin a tour. And I'm not saying that's what you have to do, Anne. I'm just throwing that out as an example. And you don't have that yet, you absolutely can apply to say, we need help developing this. And absolutely go ahead and come in with that kind of a project, absolutely included.
All right, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I would say, I wouldn't take the examples that we've shown so far as to be comprehensive of all the sorts of projects that you might propose. I think we're, as our answers to the questions so far, I hope have indicated, we're thinking about this in a pretty open-minded way. I think the most important thing is for there to be some kind of focus. Like, we're trying to do this one thing, something that, we can help you with in the time frame we're talking about of less than a calendar year, right?
Yeah.
Great.
And, many of you will know that I use this in Traveling Archivists and the archive programs and Conservation Connection, or even when I'm just wearing my museum consultant hat, baby steps. what's the baby step you can take in the direction moving forward that's going to be transitional. One of the things we hope will come out of this program is that by transforming a space, making over a space, it's going to energize all of you. It'll energize your board. It'll energize your staff or your volunteer staff. It'll excite your members. It'll excite your community. So where is that area that's going to help build some momentum? And that's what, think of that too, as you're developing these programs. Where are we going to get the most bang for our buck from this program and for our site?
Yeah, it's about starting the ball rolling with something.
Yeah.
Yeah, starting those conversations and
Right.
getting the momentum up to really, move forward.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. That's one of the things I love about these. I was like, oh, I need to go visit.
Oh, I know. That's always the thing. There's always places I haven't been to yet,
John, you got a question?
Yeah, we have, I'm from the Old Lyme Historical Society, and we've only been in our building since 2017. And actually, I'm kind of new to the organization, only since 2017. And we have an issue because we're in a Grange building, an old Grange building. Downstairs, we've converted to a climate-controlled archives room, and a reading room and a break area off to the side, all volunteer work from people on the board and contacts in the community. And we're lucky enough to be able to raise money to paint the outside of the building, and we've got some other things going on too. But the basic issue is that we're outgrowing our collection area, particularly the fact that you mentioned the agricultural implements and things like that. We have a number of them, and they're huge.
Yes.
And we've thought about putting them up on the wall and storing some of them in there, but our upstairs hall and stage, okay,
Yep.
is what we use for some of our lectures and presentations, and we don't charge anything. They're open to the community. We just take donations, but it is a fundamental part of what we do for the community. And so we've got this sort of duality going on between our collections and our archives, which is what we're all about. But on the other hand, also being a connection with the community and trying to figure out what to do with our exhibits. We have exhibits in the post office, and we have volunteers that do a phenomenal job. And we have them in town hall and sometimes in the library. And they're sort of like traveling exhibits. But we're looking for a way to sort of solve this issue of, are we a museum, or are we just going to be something that has sort of floating exhibits upstairs, but still enough room to do lectures? And we need to come up with solutions to that. Is that, so it's a combination of collection storage as well as moving forward in terms of what the exhibits are. So it's a combination of those two.
Yeah.
Is that it's not one, but
So I will,
there's-
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Is there some way we can phrase this so that we get to the point of what we're trying to do?
Absolutely. And so I will tell you, as you were describing all of that, what kind of came to my mind from just my experiences of more than 30 years in museums is that, my brain started going, all right, maybe what they need out there is to develop some display cases that also incorporate storage. So if you think of the typical museum storage space, it's typically 3 feet of an empty bottom, and then you have your display bonnet on top. So can we work with you to develop some display cabinets or ways of displaying the collection that also will give you additional storage space, so that we're finding creative ways to house the collection? Because I think you are a museum. You're providing, museums don't wear a single hat, and you have these rich collections, and having the collections out and about too. But maybe that's what maybe that's the direction. Kind of talk with your gang out there and say, could we do something on the second floor that we're kind of have like visible storage is one way to kind of look at it. How do we take the things we have and make more collection space available by turning it into visible storage or hidden storage inside of our display cases? So think if that's along the lines. If you start thinking about it and you want to, there's another direction, just shoot me an email and we'll set up a time to talk.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
John.
Yeah,
Thank you
John,
for
and
this.
if I
It's
can,
very
I can just
helpful.
add my own kind of like, in listening to you, things I was thinking about too. I mean, it sounds like you've identified a number of different challenges. One of them seems to be that maybe there's, some thinking that your organization wants to do around the connection between what you have in your collections and what you do with the public, because if you have a bunch of stuff in your collection that no one is seeing, no one is looking at, that people don't know about, how can you bring those two into consonance? Are there ways that you can think about your public programming as drawing on the collection more, to bring some of, especially those large unwieldy artifacts out for a period of time and display them in a good way, so maybe it's biting off a piece of that by, developing something around one of those objects, or, maybe it's thinking about large artifact storage, those are some other ideas that spun off of that for me. So as Kathy was saying, there isn't one direction that you can go in. It's more about kind of, and as she said, we're happy to, kind of develop this, refine your project in consultation with you, but, thinking about what's the direction you want to move in, and then what's that first step? What's the amuse bouche or the appetizer that you can kind of eat first before you get on to the main meal, which may involve more work or a little more investment of time from the organization.
And that's one thing to let all of you know too. When we were developing this program, we were in constant contact with Connecticut Humanities, who's our funder, and talking about that these initial steps that you do as part of the Museum Makeover program could be the gateway to bigger projects that you're going to apply to Connecticut Humanities for, whether you want to do an interpretive plan for your historic house, or you want to redevelop permanent exhibits, or now you've created a temporary exhibit space because of this. So you're going to go for changing exhibitions. Connecticut Humanities knows we're trying to encourage you to kind of keep the ball rolling. And I would love to say Museum Makeover will keep getting funded, and we'll see what happens. But we have the next 2 years at least to demonstrate that there's a need for this kind of support out in our cultural heritage community.
Yeah, and I would say, I'd echo Kathy's point that, I think there's a lot of interest from Connecticut Humanities at, using their resources to help continue this work. So, that's a good thing.
Absolutely. But I know this is, this program was just recently, we just sent out the emails, announcing this program. We have today's colleague circle we've done with all of you. I imagine if you're like me, the wheels are kind of turning. That is fine. If you decide, if you have future questions, if there are things you want to run past us, please, as I said, reach out to us. You don't have to, say, "Ooh, I forgot to ask this during this colleague circle." We're available. I will admit I'll be a little hit or miss over the holidays. I have some family things to attend to this weekend and next week, but I'm always checking emails, so you won't have to wait long to hear back from me. But we'll probably set up times after January 1st to really kind of dive into things with you.
If we answered all your questions, could that be possible with 8 minutes to spare? I don't believe it. Somebody's got something.
We're that good, Amrys. We're that good.
High five, Kathy. This kind of happened last week at Awards of Merit. There were like 3 questions and then crickets. So thanks, Barry. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I think we've got the wheels turning for everybody, and that's a good place to be. I'm glad we were able to do this info session before the end of the year, because it gives all of you time to, kind of chew on what we've shared with you today, to get in touch with us if you want to talk over some ideas and sort of think through that process. Because like we said, this is the whole idea behind this project, is to offer that kind of, the fresh perspective, somebody else listening to you and then saying, well, here's what I see might be doable in here. We can start that process before before you even apply. So that's what we're really trying to do. And hopefully, like I said, we're looking for opportunities to make this a way to forge relationships between you and other organizations in your area, between you and, other folks in the field who can help you do your work better. So hopefully there will be a lot of outcomes for this project, both for the organizations that are direct participants and for those who are not. Thank you all for being here today. I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes if anybody has any lingering questions that they don't want to ask out in public. But in the meantime, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. However you are celebrating the season, I wish you peace and restfulness and good health and safety for all of you in this time. Thank you for being here, and CLHO will see you in the new year.
Thank you, everyone. I'll hang on for a few minutes too, but it was great to see all of you here and so much interest, and ditto to everything Amrys said. Hope the next couple of weeks treat you well, and wishing you all the best, and a lot of museum great stuff to do.
Oh yeah, there's so much going on. Yeah, go do the things that you're doing. You're doing so much right now.
Yeah. Wait till end of 2022. Museums are going to be a force to be reckoned with in Connecticut. So thank you, everybody.
Is there a chat button?